It's my pleasure to host this panel. We have assembled here a very distinguished group of individuals, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. But first, I'll just take 1 minute to tell you about myself. I am the managing director and co-head of Norwest Venture Partners. We are a large private equity and venture capital firm headquartered out of the US. We have about $6 billion under management globally, about close to $1 billion under management in India. And I lead our healthcare investing business, among others. With that, I'm going to ask each of my panelists in turn to introduce themselves, and then we can get down to the questions. We're going to keep the panel part of the discussion relatively short and open it up to questions from the floor to the extent there are any, so we can get sort of areas that all of you are interested in addressed by the panelists.
Thanks. Good afternoon. Rohit here. I'm going to play to the audience, and we're in the business of actually creating entrepreneurs and consumers by helping deliver babies. Eventually they are entrepreneurs, customers. So that's who we are.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Ajay Kumar. I am Chairman and CEO of HCG Group of Hospitals, focused specialty in cancer, oncology, as well as in fertility. And we have about 20 centers in oncology, and recently we got listed, became a listed company. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nitish Agarwal. Our firm Indium Capital is an investment banking advisory firm. We focus a lot on healthcare in the mid-market space. We've done work across all segments of healthcare, non-pharma, hospitals, single specialty formats, devices, diagnostics, and the like.
Basti, I'm a pediatrician and a neonatologist. We have a mother and child care hospital in Mumbai, which is 170 bedded. It's a pediatric super specialty hospital and gynec and obstetrics. We also have one hospital in Pune, and we are about to start our hospitals in Jaipur and Thane.
I am Vikram Vora. I represent My Dentist. My Dentist is India's largest chain of dental clinics. We have approximately 113 dental centers as of yesterday, working out of Mumbai, Pune, Surat, Ahmedabad, and Bangalore. Currently has somewhere close to 1,450 people working for them, out of which 550 are doctors. We cater to more than 6 lakh patients so far, approximately 1.5 lakh patients every year. So, yeah, trying to contribute to the dental scene here. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Maipal Sachdev. I am the chairman and Managing Director of Centre Facade Group of Eye Hospitals. Based out of New Delhi, we have spread over 33 cities now with 53 centers. And we have a distinguished panel of ophthalmologists who super specialize in various subspecialties of ophthalmology with us. And we believe in bringing cutting edge technology into India at prices and rates which are affordable to the Indian segment. Ophthalmology is by far one of the most rapidly growing single specialty chains, and I'll wish to contribute in the panel discussion which Sohail will lead.
So Dr. Mahipal, let me start with you. Perhaps you could talk about what makes ophthalmology particularly well suited to the single specialty format, and why you believe that single specialty is the way forward for ophthalmology.
Okay. First of all, single specialty and multi-specialties will coexist. It's just a question of where does a patient get delight. Ophthalmology generally is not something which has to do a lot with sickness. A person who has, say, a cataract could otherwise be very healthy. A young person who wants to get a laser vision correction or a LASIK done wants a lifestyle change. So the environment, the ambience, and the throughput of the patient in a single specialty is definitely much faster and much better. In multi-specialties, the emphasis always, if you go to an investor or the person who is making the hospital, he'll be only talking about what is the average cost per bed. He'll be talking about average length of stay of a patient. Now, these are things which are not of relevance to a single specialty like ophthalmology, because here the patient normally undergoes what is known as a walk-in, walk-out surgery or a daycare procedure. So numbers are only dependent on the time that you have to spend on the chair in the OPD for patient and the time that the patient has to spend on the OT table. So therefore the thought processes are very different, and a typical example that I give is that if you have to buy a burger, you would wish to go to a Burger King or a McDonald's rather than go to a fine dining specialty, multi-specialty or a multi-cuisine restaurant and maybe wait for 3-4 hours before you get a burger. So in ophthalmology, as a single specialty, you are doing the same thing over and over again, and you are maximizing the outcomes in the minimum time. World over, ophthalmology is today as a separate section or a separate subspecialty or a standalone facility. The best example I would say is that you have a Mass General Hospital at Harvard, which looks after the rest of the diseases, but you have a Mass Eye Ear Infirmary which is separate. So across the world you have had single specialties in ophthalmology growing, and the biggest example today is IR of China, which commands a valuation on the stock exchange of about $6 billion.
Thank you, Dr. Mahipal. Turning to Dr. Ajay, sir, you are, we'll go from one end of the spectrum to the other. Dr. Mahipal spoke about ophthalmology, which deals with just the eye, a single organ, and you run a sort of specialty focused chain focused just on oncology, which impacts various different parts of the body. How do you feel that fits into the single specialty context? And perhaps you could also address why there are a dearth of other chains doing it. Apart from yourself, most other quality oncology care in India is available only in multi-specialty hospitals. So maybe you could also address the industry aspect a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just take off from where Dr. Mahipal left. Really it boils down to when a patient walks into the oncology center or multi-speciality with cancer, let us say, why do the patient come? Because they want good outcome. That is the key, outcome. So which can provide a better outcome? Dollars and cents aside is the outcome we really look at. And where the model created globally and historically tested is very clear. Like, I myself trained in MD Anderson in Houston. It's a focused oncology. And when you look at US, there is Mayo Clinic and others even in, but none of them are well known for oncology. It's MD Anderson and Sloan Kettering, correct? Because you have to be focused 24/7. You have to be in that field, whether it's the administration, doctors, or your pathology or radiology. You can't be saying I will do appendix and do cancer surgery also. It's not going to be that, for the patient benefit. So it is the number of surgeries you do, number of volume, complicated cases you see. Are you exposed to number of surgeries? For example, in HCG, we measure the outcome of not only the institution against all our other institutions, we measure the outcome of doctors against doctors. What is this doctor? How many surgeries is this doctor performing? So is there enough experience? Like robotic surgery you do, very complicated. Can they do enough onco robotic surgery? So this is where a focus group shines over other. But again, the other side of the story is people say, do you have cardiology? Do you have nephrology to support? But you have to develop that. That is the mandate you have. When you have a dedicated oncology center, you have to have other cardiology, pulmonary medicine, so that you can provide that kind of service to patient. Once you do that, your outcome, we believe, and it has been proven by us, is far better in investigation, R&D, for example. Research is very important. Today it's personalized medicine. When we talk about personalized medicine, why is this? A patient is responding, B patient is not responding. What is the depth? Can you go into genomics? Can I analyze this? And so the next patient who comes in, I can treat differently. So that kind of work, high in depth into each case, with a multidisciplinary clinic and all, can be done mostly in a dedicated oncology group. Now, in answer to your second question, why there are no oncology divisions compared to multi-specialties doing oncology, one of the reasons is it has been felt for a long time viability is an issue. Your focus group, can you be viable? Can an investor invest in a focus group? I myself experienced initially in 2007 when doors were shut saying your focus, if your multi-speciality will support. Because the perception is a focus group is not diversified enough to take care of some of the issues which may arise. But again, we don't believe in all cases it is true. Even a multi-speciality can fail, a focus group can also fail. And the other issue is entry barriers. Entry barriers for something like oncology are very high. Regulatory issues, getting the bunker built. So from the time you vision that you'll do an oncology center, it takes minimum 3 to 4 years to get it going and treat the first patient. So it's a long period. So people are not willing to wait for that period to get the returns or to see their vision come true. So these are all the factors which obviously complicates oncology development. And where do you draw the patients from? Is the patients coming from your own multi-speciality or they'll refer from outside? Why would anybody refer a patient to multi-speciality with oncology wing? They would refer it to an oncology because that is not a threat to their own practice. If there is an endocrinologist, diabetologist, pulmonologist who sees a cancer patient, he'll refer to oncology center, not to multi-speciality, because he knows multi-speciality, they get lost in the system. Whereas oncology means we do oncology and refer the patient back to them. So these are all the factors which really ground level realities which play a role in why oncology versus multi-speciality hospital.
Thank you very much. So Rohit, Cloud9 disrupted the birthing space, I would say, when it first came up. You were the first guys to get funding in that space. What has been the backlash, if you will, from multi-specialty, from sort of new entrants? Dr. Ajay spoke about the importance of barriers to entry. What do you see in the mother and child space, or in the birthing space, which you focus on, and what has the competitive response been to your success?
Sure. Thanks, Sohil. So for us at Cloud9, I think adding to what the other gentlemen have also shared, I think the single point focus of being able to celebrate life and not get it associated with sickness, illness, all of those things have paid huge dividends in trying to create a niche of actually celebrating pregnancy. Now, multi-specialty hospitals always had been delivering babies. The clinical outcomes, all of those were something which was not really focused upon in terms of what really gets into their matter of perspective about was this good enough or not. So just like what Dr. Ajay was also sharing, that the ability to go deeper and figure out what really can be done better is far more possible with us. And that is what we continuously try to innovate on and try to dwell on. So multi-specialty hospitals, as they keep growing, they will keep continuing to doing all the specialties across. They haven't stopped getting into onco. They haven't stopped getting into any other specialties, right? They will continue to do it. But as the consumers start demanding for better service, better availability of services as a holistic perspective, to give you a simple survey that we did very recently, about 78% of the couples who come to us have never been to a hospital before. So we, for one, did not want to change that aspect by saying that you need to come into a hospital environment by, actually having to be surrounded by others with illness and all of that. So these will continue to grow. Consumers will start to, embrace the requirement of specialities. As my other colleagues here have also been sharing, that it is important to bring that focus. And that's how I think it will continue to grow.
Thank you. Now, Vikram, you took a space which was just highly unorganized, and you're trying to organize it, if you will, in My Dentist. What have been sort of your key learnings over this period, and the key challenges you faced when trying to build out, roll out a network of dentist clinics in an industry that's so fragmented and so competitive?
So, as you said, it is a fragmented industry, and it's traditionally been like all healthcare fraternities, has been a very closely bound mom and pop shop kind of a scenario, which we would call in normal retail. What we are trying to do is we are trying to build an organized company which will actually provide standardized care, which is accessible, affordable, and available to the masses. We've been very clear right from the beginning in selecting our target audience, which is the middle class and the lower middle class. And that's what differentiates us. Now, since we have targeted that audience, the first challenge that comes up is that is there a demand or an understanding of the requirement of dentistry amongst this audience? Now, unfortunately, as a statistic, we know that the average number of times an urban Indian goes to a dentist in a lifetime is 2. It's 2, right? As against developed countries where it's 2 in a year. So the first challenge then comes is how do I get these people into the clinic, but with which comes the opportunity, and hence the standard misnomer of having a doctor-patient relationship or a family-dentist relationship existing. There is no relationship because this person is going to him twice in a lifetime, right? So if it is there, it's in the mind of the people outside. So that we realized when we started. So we started off with a primary vision of trying to eliminate this relationship, but we realized that relationship did not exist. And now I think the biggest challenge is to make sure that the talent pool that we generate, and I say generate because there's a lot of training that happens from our back end. So we are the maximum amount of investment that this company does is in training doctors ground up and making them ready to work according to the protocols. When I say protocols, these are non-clinical protocols. So we don't interfere with the clinical working fashion of the doctors. What we do interfere is with ergonomics, work study, and in clinic science of trying to make processes more efficient. And that's our biggest challenge, and that's what we are trying to do. And the second challenge is affordability. And when I say affordability, it's not about making things cheaper, it's making things affordable. So we are possibly one of the largest customers of 3 of the largest consumer finance companies in India. So we do generate a lot of business for Bajaj Finserv, where we divide treatment costings into EMIs and give it to patient, making it affordable to the common man. So making consumerism, the primary driver for healthcare is what is our challenge right now.
Sure, thank you. Dr. Avasthi, what would you see as the opportunities to scale your business? Sort of you run relatively large centers focused on the mother and child segment. So what is the opportunity to scale either geographically or within the same region by adding more specialties? How do you think about that?
If you see anywhere in our country, most of the metropolitan cities or even tier 2, tier 3 cities, there are not even, most of the cities don't have any mother and child care hospitals which are dedicated. So we have enough opportunities to have these type of hospitals across the country. Also, medically speaking, newborn mortality, morbidity, maternal morbidity, mortality is extremely high. And it's purely because we don't have good NICU beds or good PICU beds, pediatric intensive care units, or good pediatric beds or good maternity beds. And that is where government has also started to do a lot of work, and that is where work has to be done. If you go across the world, wherever you go, you will always find mother and child care dedicated hospitals, which are pediatric super specialty hospitals and gynec and obstetrics. Which means that like a large multi-specialty hospital, where you have departments of orthopedics, or you have departments of surgery, or you'll have oncology. In pediatrics, you'll have pediatric oncology, pediatric gastroenterology, developmental pediatrics, pediatric gastroenterology, and lots of things. So in a large hospital, wherever you go, you have 30 departments, and one of the departments is pediatrics. So for example, in Mumbai, for example, Leelavati, which I look after, they have a 5-bedded neonatal intensive care unit. Mumbai requires about 3,000 neonatal beds. Mumbai is the financial capital, and Mumbai does not have more than 400-500 neonatal beds if you take government and municipal hospitals combined. Surya has 105 beds, which is more than all the private hospitals combined in Mumbai. So there is enough opportunity, enough scope. And why are these more than 100-bedded hospitals? Because they are all teaching hospitals. So we have post-graduation in pediatrics, super specialization. That's purely because moment you are a single specialty hospital and you are more than 100 beds, then we are able to get that status of a teaching hospital.
Thank you. Nitish, perhaps you could, based on your industry work, talk a little bit about the quality of care and the quality of delivery in these single specialty formats versus what you see typically in a multi-specialty specialty format in India.
So,
from an outsider's perspective, while we analyze the financial outcomes, we've seen a distinct difference across the single specialty formats as well. The way we look at it is there are some single specialties which each unit is smaller. For example, dental, eye, etc. And then there are units which are larger, for example, oncology and mother and child. So they have different characteristics. We are generalizing a bit by putting them together under one umbrella, but the ones where each unit is smaller, they generally, what we have seen is that it's not as if they have emerged now. They've always remained out there as your neighborhood dentist or a neighborhood this thing. So I think a lot of the chains that we are seeing now are efforts at organizing them into chains rather than single doctor-led practices. So the quality of care therefore becomes more dependable, let me put it that way. I won't comment on whether one doctor is better than the other one clinic or not, but the quality of care definitely is more dependable. You get that. So I think the branding also works much better there of the chain, because you then say, okay, fine, if it's my dentist, if I go to my dentist clinic and if I change cities and go to another one, I'll probably get a similar level of comfort, of quality on care, etc., etc. So that definitely is there in the consumer and the patient's mind. As far as more evolved, or more from a customer's perspective, where the interaction is longer, oncology or mother and child, in these cases it's probably half an hour to 2 hours or something like that. It is very, very individual. I think the quality of care probably will get better, I would imagine, as more specialty come in. As Dr. Ajay Kumar was saying, more specialization will always result in better depth of knowledge in that particular area. To be honest, while Rohit is here and Dr. Avasthi is here, I have never seen people who swear by Cloud9 in Bangalore, or I'm sure with Dr. Avasthi's business as well, who come and say, I went there because the quality of care was better. I've heard more in terms of convenience of saying that, look, I don't want to go to a hospital because birthing is not a disease, as Rohit said. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you. One of the challenges we often hear about in this industry is that the doctors, especially in areas which are surgical driven, the doctors command patient loyalty as opposed to the brand. And I'd be interested in seeing how that reflects in each of your businesses, both in terms of your current business, in the economics you have to share with your top doctors, but also in terms of when you go out to open a new location outside of your geographical core area. How does that really work for you? Does the brand have pull outside of your home market? So are you finding that you have to recruit star doctors to build that? Perhaps we can start with you, Dr. Ajay.
Yeah, certainly, this is something commonly we address it. When you look at the model, it's very clear. A sustainable model has to be institution. It cannot be doctor-based. Whether it is HCG or the doctors of HCG, it has to be HCG. So the patients should come to the quality care provided by HCG. In our own model, we are very clear, even though there are doctors who are partners, who are shareholders, a lot of them, we have been always driven by creating an institution, whether it is hub and spoke model, center of excellence, spokes, but we do partner with doctors. One of the things which we have pioneered is how do we go to Ahmedabad and work with a group of surgeons to JV model where they are 26% partners and they're dedicated to us. So this model is a very sustainable model because the doctors are not going to go anyway. And the name of the hospital is HCG, not their doctor's name. So they are also comfortable because they have the financial reward, they are sharing. At the same time, they have assurance that will be with us for a long time. So these are partners where we also done in Cuttack, for example, where they have a revenue share model, rent lease model with the doctors, group surgeons. So what you have to look at is the local, regional players, and a national brand like us comes in and is the best of both worlds. The local doctor suddenly gets to fame because national brand is a partner, and we get sudden accessibility to the local patient load he is seeing. So that way, it's the best of all worlds, and it's a very sustainable model. Nobody is going to run away with this model. We are all stuck in this, and we develop the model. As we develop the model, I believe this is the one where we should go forward. Unfortunately, in India, we have not seen this. It is very common globally, where multi-speciality clinics partnering with doctors. In India, doctors, as a doctor, I can say clearly, we are very much, our own mind, I alone can do, like a banyan tree type of an approach. We never believed in developing a famous oncologist. He is a famous oncologist, he will always be, he will die as a famous oncologist, he will never leave a legacy behind. How do we create a model where other doctors are there with you, who take over your mantle after you're gone? This model has to be established for a sustainable group where I think if we can master this model, not only financially, but care given at each center, tier 2, tier 3 cities. That is what HCG has done, able to penetrate tier 2, tier 3 cities, whether it is Vijayawada, Nasik, Cuttack. We have been able to go places where other corporates have not gone, Hubli, Shimoga, because we partner with doctors and create sustainability. We should explore this model more, where there are big corporate hospitals feel they themselves alone can do it. I think it has to be a team and partnership model, particularly fields like oncology, which requires constant treatment to the patient. It's not just hip replacement and knee replacement. It is like a months together, if not years together. So this is what we have done successfully so far. And I think we really take a lot of pride in working with other doctors.
Dr. Mahipal, maybe you could respond as well.
See, one basic thing that we have to understand is stemming not from the models that we are talking about, but is stemming from medical education in India. So medical education in India is very disparate in the sense that a doctor, we learned in All India Institute of Medical Sciences versus a doctor coming out of XYZ place, there is a huge disparity in the skill sets that the doctor has acquired. As technology is coming in thick and fast, it is the technology and the doctor who have to deliver the results. So for at least the next few decades, I would say, till medical education comes of age in India, the doctor is going to follow the 80-20 rule. That means that 20% of the doctors will do 80% of the work. So that is still there, and a lot of the times, as you can see, as in his case, or in Center for Sight, or in the birthing center, or even in Cloud 9. So there is the doctor who has the initial nucleus or the initial thing where he has grown incrementally and not exponentially. So he has grown incrementally, and then when he wants to create a legacy, as he said, or to institutionalize the practice, and that is when the investor comes in with the money and you wish to grow that. Now, there are several advantages of a chain wherein you can cross-use doctors. For example, in ophthalmology or even in oncology, there are super specializations. For example, he is the master of oncology, but I know that Center for Sight in Hyderabad does better in ocular oncology than possibly what they are doing, because the number of retinoblastoma cases that we are doing is phenomenally high. So the point, therefore, is that you can cross-use your doctors when you are doing the hub and spoke model, where your super specialized can go once in 1 week, 2 weeks, etc., to those other centers. So initially, you need to have good doctors. They form the nucleus, and it is a very good, happy marriage, where a setup is there and good doctors are there. And the brand of the doctor is bigger than the institution at that particular time. But over time, it becomes just the reverse, where the doctor gets totally depersonalized, and because again and again consistently the quality of care that corporate chain has given, the word of mouth becomes bigger, the branding becomes bigger, and therefore that becomes the thing. So whenever we do the hub and spoke model, so whenever we go to a new city, our first target, we can go to in 20 cities. We have established that this is all where we can do. Our model is where we can get a good doctor, we can immediately put up a center in 3 months' time. So that is very important, that when you go into a new geography or a new territory, you need to marry a doctor with a patient base and your corporate practices and your SOPs and build him as the nucleus and then grow from there. So I think as things stands, because of the disparity in medical education, you will still require great doctors to start a practice in a new geography.
Vikram, has your experience been different? I mean, given you're concentrated in a smaller geographic area and you've gone much deeper into that area?
I mean, radically different, but of course stems out of the fact that these are two different areas of medical science. What we've done is we have a very clear policy. We don't do brownfield. We do only greenfield. We work with, so basically the average age of doctors that we have is 31 years. The maximum age is 25 years. Right? These are people who come, doctors who are 3-4 years of experience, worked with existing practitioners. We have a very strong training platform. The person goes through 6 months of intensive training inside. So that's where we eliminate the difference that comes out of the medical education system of the country. The person actually goes through. So we follow, and a lot of people will hate me for this, but we follow what the TCS or the Infosys model is, where they get hold of the best of engineers, get them through a 3-6 months training program, make them ready to be deployed in a system, and then have a system which is completely driven by protocols, closely monitored by very clean, very strict structures which are built by the best doctors available in the country. And then this is what generates. And what we've been able to do, therefore, is that we've been able to build a model that is independent of doctors, absolutely independent of doctors, so absolutely independent of geographies. So tomorrow morning, if we want to go and expand in a place like Guwahati, all we need to do is we need to put up a center and an advertisement which says that we require doctors, wait for 6 months till that doctor who joins passes through our entire training program, and we deploy that person there. There have been a lot of naysayers against this entire process because it is a disruption. It's not what's done with medical science ever before. And a lot of people don't like it, but it's working. And we have a very high patient satisfaction score. 55% of our patients actually are either repeat patients or patients referred by our existing patients. And we've treated more than 6.5 lakh patients right now, unarguably the largest in Asia. So I think that's how we want to work.
I think there's a difference in the criticality of the type of surgery that you're doing and your short training of 6 months. I cannot say that I get an ophthalmologist and 6 months I can get him or I can hone his skills to that level.
I agree.
So that is the problem. The point is it is where you are, and when you get a standard of care in 6 months, we cannot get that.
I agree. So I started my argument with the status that it's a completely different area of medical science. So, but this is how we work.
Rohit, maybe, I know Cloud9 has a very strong brand in Bangalore, but how much of a challenge has it been for you to expand that brand outside of Bangalore? How easy has it been in other cities, and has that had any impact on your expansion plans?
Sure. No, actually it's heartening to hear the doctors say that doctors are important. It's great. So for us, look, Bangalore has given us a lot of experiences in terms of how do we look after our doctors and all of that, and I couldn't agree more. For us, there is definitely 2 sets of customers. One is a doctor and one is a customer. So a doctor is the first one that we go after. We again don't do brownfield, we only do greenfield. But once we figure out that this is a city that we want to go to and this is a kind of location that we actually want to be in, the first customer we try to acquire is the doctor. And ours is a very, just adding to the notion that Dr. Mahipal also shared, it's a very push-pull. You will need that push initially from the doctor. So for us, the win is that you are able to attract that doctor. And then it's a pull that the brand does through the network effect, our ability to actually give a better time value of money for the doctor. Because for a doctor, the equity is a time value of money. So how can you, in the same period of 24 hours, be able to generate more income, be able to handle more volumes more efficiently? All of these goes into how the operational metrics of our entity goes through. So we've not had, we've been growing at a pace where we've been able to attract the best of clinicians across. We're in 5 cities, we're adding 5 more cities in this year, and everywhere we've got tremendous response, and it's just been overwhelming because obstetricians, gynecologists, they're very closely knit, and it's very referenceable, if I can say that. So the doctors, because we look after them really well, we've been able to attract, in all the locations that we've been able to partner with some of the best clinicians there are.
Dr. Avasthi, maybe you could speak to your experience.
I completely agree with Ajay Kumar, because what we also try to do is we try and create entrepreneurs out of doctors. And there are many doctors who've been practicing for so many years, and they have giant practice, and suddenly they retire and their practice is worth nothing. So we try and encourage these doctors. Whenever we start a hospital, and wherever we are starting now, we try and get a group of doctors who are extremely good in their work, who are well qualified, who are well trained. Try and make them partners, maybe small partners, but try and make them invest in the hospital project. And our backbone is going to be intensive care. What is also important we forget is, even if you have single specialty hospital, sometimes we depend on multi-speciality. Because we have a child who may become critical and we may have to shift. So our backbone has been critical care. So we want it to be patient-friendly, and safety of the patient is going to be very important when we build this type of hospitals. And throughout, wherever we see, if in Bombay or Pune, we have a strong NICU, PICU, and adult intensive care. Even if you don't have many adult patients, but we may have adult intensive care so that we don't make any mistakes. Now, these doctors, when you make them invest, and if they're good in their work, they are really motivated, they are really charged, and they take the responsibility, and they're also extremely loyal, and they take this hospital forward, and it makes a lot of difference. Now, the difference is, in a multi-specialty hospital, there is a lot of attrition. In a single specialty hospital, because they are, they get a good foundation, they get a good platform, and they are well known because of that particular foundation. They like to work over there, and doctors want to be secure, and they feel a little secure. But at the same time, if there is attrition in a single specialty hospital, it's going to be difficult for single specialty hospital to manage. That's why he said resource management. You have doctors working at various places. You have, say, strong fetal medicine. You may not have many fetal medicine experts, but one fetal medicine person can probably run a couple of centers, and that can make a lot of difference. Also, leveraging technology, analytics, and process standards are very, very important when you have a single specialty hospital.
Thank you. Now, Nitish, there have been some sort of high-profile failures in the single specialty space. What lessons do you think we can take away as a panel from some of what's gone wrong?
So I can share from our experience because typically we don't run businesses, but we see and interact with a lot of people. Maybe some of the other panelists can join in as well. One of the key things, let me take a step back saying when we evaluate a business for investment, for example, one of the key checks you want to do at that point in time is how scalable is that business, because single specialty formats are about scalability, much more in units than let's say multi-specialty or other formats. So what does scalability mean? A lot of people colloquially say scalability means I've got a format, now I'll just replicate it. But it's not just about the infrastructure that you replicate. There are a lot of other connects in terms of getting the doctors, getting the patient flow, etc. I think from what we have seen, other than the lack of, or rather the inability to find medical talent, what we have seen is a lot of single specialties get wrong is how to get the patient flow into the new formats. Let's remember that the per unit revenue in single specialty is much lower than multi-specialty. So you require a far large, maybe not true for oncology and mother and child to that extent, but in others it's far smaller ticket size. So you need a far larger footfall for every rupee of revenue that you make. So you've got to figure out that each new unit that you set up, how are you going to ensure through connects, marketing and sales in healthcare is very different from other industries. But how do you ensure that you do enough of that to get those footfalls? And most of the time we see that becomes the challenge. You've got good infrastructure, sometimes even good doctors, good talent, good skills, good ability to service, so you have created the capacity, but you've not been able to figure out in that particular micro market, within, let's say, a few square kilometers, how to get the volumes into you. So in a sense, you have not figured out how you're still competing with the other guys. We've seen successful change. Let me invert the answer. Do the partnerships much better, where it's not that either you acquire the doctor and get them on this side, or you just compete with them. You just break the fence and say, let's work together. So, yeah.
Just want to add that no, the failure is always, as I say, stepping stones to success. We need to understand why certain failures have happened. One thing in my own reflection is it entrepreneur's vision? Is it synergized with the investors who are coming? And what is the end game here? Is it something to really double the number of centers? What are the investors looking for? What is the entrepreneur looking for? Is it the quality of care, number of centers, how quickly we can do returns? So the other thing is the honesty is important in terms of giving what is the assurance we give to PE investors. Like we all had PE investors who say, I want 25% return, 20. Can we do that? In healthcare, it's not possible. If somebody is fooling ourselves to say, we'll give you that kind of return. And when you get the money saying that I'll get a return, then it is bound to fail. So we have to be realistic. Is it 15%? What is it? And what is the timeline? When is it going to get an exit? Are we working towards that? So I think these fundamental things, while we have the vision, everything, who is the person I'm backing? I'm backing the entrepreneur's vision. Am I going to continue with that or change course? So what I see out there is whenever the dichotomy comes, when that two separate out, that's bound to fail. But when two are in sync with each other, majority of the time it doesn't fail.
I think we're out of time now. So thank you all very much for participating on this panel. Appreciate all the given.